Hello and welcome to the PFLAG LA Podcast. We release every month on all the different podcast platforms. We're dedicated to bridging family, friends, and allies to the queer community. And every month we'll provide you with information, education, resources, and support to help you strengthen your advocacy. Today's guest will be Sue Granzella. She is a writer and a longtime Title I elementary school teacher. I'm your host and moderator, Thomas Callahan. And with me as well is my co-host, Farah Dotis.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. How was your week this week, Thomas?
It was good. We're in LA, of course, so it is hot. I've decided.
So hot.
I've decided in my 30 years being here, this is the third hottest. And it's because it's so long.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. It keeps going and it's not. Yeah. I hope we have enough rain this year that we don't have, like our terrible wildfire season coming up.
Right. Exactly. Oof. Yeah.
But it is hot. And
Anthony won't be with us today, but I'm sure he'll be back next month. He's in one of those funny zones, right?
Exactly.
The Wi-Fi isn't that great.
The Wi-Fi dead zones. We love you, Anthony.
Yeah. Who remembers dial-up, right?
Oh my gosh, with like the screeching tones. Yeah, no, that is, yeah. Those are some fun days. Anyway, so I will go ahead and jump into the definition for the month. This month, we've chosen the word gatekeeping, and gatekeeping is a broad term not only used within the LGBTQ plus community, which describes the process by which an individual decides who does or does not belong to a certain community, group, or identity. For example, a gay man telling a questioning man that he has to have sex with another man before he can call himself gay is an example of gatekeeping. Gatekeeping, which can come from inside or outside the LGBTQ plus community, should be avoided as it is painful and invalidating to the recipient in either instance. So yes, I think this is a very important term to be discussing today, particularly with Sue's book that we're discussing, because it really does cover the culture wars. It discusses who, is or is not, quote unquote, acceptable. Also, from a parental standpoint, some parents, they are gatekeeping their kids' personalities, identities.
Right. Yeah. It's just, it comes from many different angles.
It comes from many different angles. Exactly. Right. And so this term really covers what Sue has gotten at in her book, and I look forward to investigating it further and hearing all of her insights from her travels.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Farah. If there's a word or term that you would like us to talk about or explain, please let us know. That you can also go on the PFLAG.org, the main PFLAG website. They have the glossary of terms where you can read further and learn about the different terms that are out there. And I know a lot of times it can be confusing because a lot of them change. They come and they go, but that'll help you out. Before we get to our guests, we always like to highlight an event happening in the community, and this month, we have the DTLA Proud Festival. It's happening August 28th to 30th, and it's happening downtown LA, and it will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So Friday is a kickoff party that starts at 9 p.m. to it ends, I guess, around 2 o'clock. Proud Picnic in the Park will be happening at the LA State Historic Park. And the main event is on Sunday, which is the DTLA Proud Festival. And that's happening at the La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. And that'll be from noon till 10 p.m. And they're going to have all kinds of stages. They're going to have a trans House of Power, a trans chorus of LA will be there. Meatball and Sweet Tea will be there. I have no idea who they are, but I love these. I love when I come across either performers or bands that have great names.
Yes.
So Meatball
and Sweet
Tea, they're two different
I feel
things.
Like they need to join together on something, because that is a fantastic, just together. Well, you know what?
Actually, a food festival. We need a food festival.
Yes.
So there'll also be a Latin drag show. Check them out. Again, it's the 28th. To 30th, DTLA Proud Festival. They have a wonderful website that explains everything. And that website is DTLAProud.org. PFLAG.org. If you miss it, if you're driving, of course, all of this will be on our website for you to look at. So hopefully you'll be able to attend and enjoy a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. I'm going to try and go to that. I feel like what I was seeing on the website, I really want to check it out. And also there's lots of, LGBTQ plus vendors there, supportive vendors. So I'm, a sucker for buying things. I have a
Oh, they'll
shopping
love you.
issue. I know.
They'll love you.
It's true. Yes. So thank you so much, Thomas. That's awesome. I'm very
Okay.
excited. So today on the podcast, we're very excited to have Sue Granzella. Sue is a writer and longtime elementary school teacher. Her writing has been recognized as notable in Best American Essays and has won numerous awards, including runner-up Teachers and Writers Magazine's Bechtel Prize. Sue is here to discuss her new book, Pushed to the Edge, Teachers' Stories from the Culture Wars. It's a powerful and timely collection of first-person accounts from the front lines of today's culture wars as Black educators, queer teachers, targeted librarians, and vulnerable students share their stories. Sue Granzella, it's great to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's really great to meet you too, and I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. Yes, you're so welcome. So I wanted to start with just a little bit of backstory on this book. What was your inspiration for doing the book? A little bit of where you were coming from before you started writing the book, things like that.
Okay, well, I was still teaching during the first year and a half of the pandemic. That first year when the kids went March 13th, that was it. And then we spent the rest of the year at home. And then the next school year, we started off, for a long time, most of the year in my district was virtual. It was the hardest I'd ever worked. The kids, my teachers at my school, we worked so hard to help them feel engaged. So many of those kids came from second language, they were second language learners, very low income area, a lot of them don't have books at home. So we worked so hard to keep them engaged. And then I retired, and then there was a drag story hour at the San Lorenzo Library. And there was the person in drag was named Panda Dulce. And I heard after it happened that the Proud Boys had shown up and targeted Panda. And it was what I saw on the news and what I read did not come close to conveying how frightening and violent it was, emotionally violent it was. And I didn't learn that until I was deep into the book. But something in me snapped at that because I had worked so hard during the pandemic to keep kids engaged. Other teachers had, librarians had. We all, especially kids who come from limited resources, they need to take advantage of libraries. And the kids who were there had to be there with their parents, and their parents had to have signed up in advance. So who are these people who just thought it was okay to tell parents what they should and shouldn't do with their own children? So I did a demonstration, one woman demonstration in front of the library. I made all my signs of glitter and rainbows and sat there. While I was there was a lesbian librarian who approached me in the parking lot. Again, still pandemic time. So I had 2 chairs that were 6 feet apart. She approached me in the parking lot with her arms wide and just goes, "You're here." And she didn't know me. I didn't know her. And we embraced. And I ended up being interviewed on TV because there was a news crew there that day. I wrote an op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle called "All Children Deserve Protection, Not Just Straight White Cisgender Kids." And but then when I was done with that, I just felt like, I got to do more. And I was so aware that there are teachers who were facing things that were harder than what I had just faced during doing pandemic teaching, and that they were still out there. And this rising animosity toward teachers and against so many people in our society, it was just rising and getting worse. So I just thought, I want to talk to them. I want to be their megaphone. I want to hear what it's like out there now. And so I started contacting people and traveled California off and on for a year and a half and heard some stories.
I mean, it's truly amazing. It is a wonderful, I haven't totally finished it. I should, I should
It's
admit.
all good.
It's all good. But it is wonderful just to see and read these windows into these teachers and students' lives of what they're really living, what they're encountering daily. I am a parent. My kids were, what is it, fifth and second grade, I think, during the majority of the pandemic. I know it was a lot. I remember having to be tech support, and I was terrible tech support. But also, I do remember it was like a light switch of how things used to operate and then how things operate now. And there was no playbook for anyone, and everyone was just making it up. And then often, I think everyone was grabbing for things. I know our district was grabbing for resources for the teachers to be able to teach, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. And teachers, you guys had to pivot on a dime, and not even just one pivot. It was 100 pivots because of just what we were dealing with, the situation we were dealing with.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I do wonder if you could talk a little bit about, there was a shift from parents really appreciating teachers to suddenly it was a switch over, and teachers were suddenly the enemy, frankly. It turned into angel devil, basically. And if you could speak about that from your experience.
It is so validating to hear a non-teacher say that.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what happened. The first few months, in March, April, May of 2020, I'm scrolling through social media and when I wasn't teaching or
Right.
prepping lessons.
No worries. Please, we were all scrolling. We didn't have anything to do outside of, right, our job.
Yeah.
If we could do our job remotely, right? So don't even apologize for that.
Yeah.
We were all on, that's all we could do,
And so while it was nice to hear people say, oh my gosh, there were just all these voices saying, oh, I didn't know how hard it is to be a teacher. And I was thinking, you still don't know how hard it is to be a teacher, because I'm prepping all the lessons. I'm giving them all to you. I'm doing translations of things. I'm putting, just making videos for kids so that they would understand how to do the art project I was trying to teach them. And yeah, I used to get really mad at Nicole Wallace on what was then called MSNBC. I love her. But she kept saying how hard it was to teach her kid. And I was like, we're teaching them. You're just the adult in the room.
Exactly.
But for a few months, that's what it was. And
Right.
it was people were saying, oh, teachers, yay.
Yeah.
And then in the summer, it was only a few months.
Interesting.
In the summer, that's when I noticed it, is when it started. I think it was when it started to hit people that their school was almost certainly going to start virtually
Remote again.
still.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes. That all of a sudden people were like, that's not good. And one of the things that really hit me was when my husband's cousin reposted something. I used to stalk her on Twitter. I didn't do Twitter except to stalk her. And she posted something that was criticizing I think it was a first grade teacher who had written an op-ed in the New York Times saying, please don't make me die for teaching your kids. It was basically saying we should be allowed to stay home. There's no vaccine. Kids can't keep masks on their face, And she reposted that with some snarky comment that implied that she was working in a hospital, which she wasn't. And she was basically saying it was awful that teachers were doing that. And so you're exactly right. We did go from being hero,
Right.
enemy.
Yeah.
And there was something so enraging about that. And that's what I kind of look at. I know there was stuff happening before that. I know there's been anti-LGBTQ plus stuff for a long time, but there was something about the nature of it then, because then teachers were lumped into, we don't trust you. You're the enemy. You're not doing right by kids. And
Right.
that was just enraging.
Right. And I came to realize that the system doesn't work if we don't place basic trust in one another's intentions. So if an
Yeah.
and it really was, I do feel like it was maybe not the beginning of the culture war against teachers, but it definitely like augmented and amplified that war. And it wasn't just say like a right versus left situation. It really did just become lots of parents over the frustration with COVID. I understand it's hard. It was just difficult all around.
Yeah.
But it really did become like teachers are the bad guys. And I had never, I just never seen that. And
yeah. There was one teacher told me about a school board meeting where a parent said, this is one of the teachers I interviewed, where a parent went up to the microphone and said, or I don't know if it was virtual or not, but said, we want to put trackers on teachers because they thought that during the pandemic, some people thought that teachers were just out shopping and, just having fun. So they wanted to, at least one proposed having trackers on teachers to make sure they were home doing their job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like you're some sort of convict. God.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean,
anyway.
it seems like it would be obvious that it's obvious that you're there. I mean, you were there.
One would think.
You're there teaching the kids, right? One would think.
Yeah.
Unless you throw a picture up, maybe, then they'd be like, well.
But even if, it's like, can't teachers be human? I guess that's the real question is, it was something like where teachers or administrators, you had to live up to an ideal that was, inhuman, basically. No one can reach that ideal. And you are allowed to take a bathroom break during class. You are allowed to,
the whole model was new.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and then also it wasn't a model. It was all like, what do you call it? Kind of shiplapped together out of nothing.
It was a model. Everyone had a different version of it.
Everyone was making a new model. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So it was impossible, almost impossible to navigate. I mean, I still don't know how teachers navigate it at all. But on to my next question. I feel like over the past, say, 20-ish years, especially just in culture, in the world in general, things have shifted so drastically, particularly because technology is like asymptotically becoming smarter and growing at such a rate that we're all catching up, basically. And then information is transferred so swiftly at this point. And I think kids these days, they understand that knowledge flies at them super fast and they grab it where they can. So as a teacher, seeing that shift over time and dealing with parents over time, are there any moments where you feel like if you were in contention with a parent about something, what were the moments that were successful? Are there, times that you can point to where you were really butting heads with a parent, but then there was an aha moment between the two of you? What did that look like? How did that pan out? And then are there moments where you're like, oh, I can tell this is not going to go well and I need to remove myself, or, just like I need to just let it lie. So if you can talk about, those two scenarios.
The dance, The
dance.
Yeah. And so this is about just in general,
so
teaching, not necessarily culture war. Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily, but just difficult. Because I feel like that is the root of it. Even if it's a culture war, it's still just a point of contention. And how do you navigate those?
I got better over the years. It was very difficult as a beginning teacher, early years teacher, through all the years. It's never easy when a parent comes to you with an issue, something they're concerned about. Mm-hmm. But I ended up having enough conversations with parents who really had something valid to say that sometimes when the moments when I was successful is when I was able to try to just, take a deep breath and say, all right, try to hear them. And so one example that I remember was I called a parent to tell her that her child, he was Black, had said something pretty disrespectful to me, and I felt really something you don't say to a teacher.
Right.
And I called her, and her response was, I mean, she probably said, yeah, I wish he hadn't said that, but her main response was, he thinks you pick on him as a Black boy. He thinks you just try to silence him. And that helped me, and I had heard of culturally responsive teaching, and I knew about, cultural norms and, allowing kids to be who they are and all this. But I really had to look at it, am I kind of harder on him because he's just really doing wrong things? Or is it that his way of challenging me had something down there to do with race? And I decided that if he felt that way, then there was something valid to it, whether it was exactly coming from me or he was sick of it in society being told to quiet down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we ended up having a real conversation, and I think it was because I was able to hear her.
Right.
And I was able to validate, okay, I'm really glad you told me, that he feels that way. What else has he said? How can I understand better? That kind of thing.
Right.
And I had some encounters like that, that helped me grow as a person. And I think I got better over the years. And then there were some where, oh God, yeah, I remember one time a child called me a shithead, third grade.
Oh,
She was the youngest third grader in the class, and she had written it in a note and then left it on the desk of the child next to her, but it was about me, and the child next to her just came up like she knew she had to give it to me, but she was horrified.
Yeah.
And so when I talked to the mother about it, she denied that her kid had done it because the kid said, I didn't do it.
Right.
And then the next morning, the mother burst in during reading instruction and demanded the note so she could have a handwriting analysis conducted. I mean, this is not a community where people have expendable, extra income that they can spend on getting a handwriting analysis.
Right.
Yeah. So she brought 4 people in to a meeting with the principal and just kind of went after me. And so those kinds of things, you just have to seek the support of fellow teachers, and after school, go in their classroom and just, oh my God, I don't ever want to see her again.
Right.
But I found that maybe it's part of it is because I got older. I used to be the same age as the parents, and then older, and then quite a bit older. And then sometimes kids would start calling me grandma accidentally and then be horrified. Oh God.
Yeah.
But I think that I got better at hearing parents' concerns, and I think they somehow sensed that because of my experience, I was really trying to do right by their kids.
Right.
So working with parents, and I know you're a parent, is always challenging for teachers, but most of the parents in my career, I would say, were really good, and some were just great in terms of being supportive. And,
Right. Do you ever do you ever talk to the kids after, like for the first incident you mentioned? Did you swing back and check in with that child?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, that was really emphasized at my school to talk with the children. And I certainly didn't want to have them feel like their parent ratted them out.
Right. There's a delicate balance.
Yeah. So there were some things I didn't want to betray, but then there were some things, I was frequently trying to ask open-ended questions, about how did that feel when you told me about, or when you said that, or, sometimes I get the feeling that you're not feeling accepted, or sometimes you look like you're angry at me. Can you tell me if that's true? Or, so talking with kids was actually probably one of my strengths as a teacher. Because I wanted them to know I'm on their side. Again, the delicate balance, though,
Right.
yeah, I'm the grown-up in the room, and yeah, I have a vision of where I want us to go, but that doesn't mean that your voice is not important and that I don't use what you say to help improve me as a teacher and as a human.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is. I mean, the classroom dynamic is, all parties in there are responsible for it. You as a teacher, but the students, how they work together or work on their own, work with you. Like, I always laugh at different class because I feel like each year is totally different. It's a totally different animal depending on which kids, what percentages of kids and different personalities, right? Like it can
Totally
turn on a dime. Yeah.
It always amazed me that
Mhm.
a class could have a personality as a group.
Yes.
I've had classes that were just outrageously talkative,
Right.
but hardworking.
Mhm.
And that was hard to work with because I couldn't get them to be quiet, but they were doing their work. So I
Right.
didn't have a lot of leverage,
Exactly.
Yeah, I had classes, one class one year, a lot of the kids in the class had been through trauma and, but they were extraordinarily empathetic.
Wow,
A
yeah.
class one year that was super angry. I mean, it's just the whole gamut.
Right.
You
Right.
see it all.
Right. I mean, this is another thing that amazes me about teachers is because every year is different. Every day is different. You really are on your
Yeah.
toes all the time.
Yeah.
And I, have 2 kids that I'm raising, but you're raising, 30 every year, basically.
Yeah, but they
Yeah.
used to walk out my door at 2:35 and they
This is
go
true.
home to you. So yeah.
That is different, yes.
Yeah.
But still, you're with them a good amount of the daytime hours. So another question I wanted to ask, I mean, the world that we're in right now, especially because now there is just a fomented distrust of teachers from a parent perspective. How do we get back to a relationship where it is very much just like a trust of knowing that we're working in the best interest of the child? Because I do feel like certain dynamics in the world where parents are trying to force their rights upon the school environment, where students have rights too. They should. And it is all about teaching the students and making sure students are prepared for the world, not just academically, but socially and emotionally and, just as a whole person. How do you work? I mean, is it possible? How do you work with a parent who is forcing the rights upon your classroom or your children? Can you work with it? Have you found ways to work with parents in this way?
Well, okay, I'm thinking of one parent who she just didn't like me.
Okay.
And I think it stemmed, I can't remember if she liked me before this, but her daughter loved me. And one day there was a kid in the class who said something unkind. He said something unkind to most of the kids in the class. And he said something unkind to this girl and, or maybe he threatened her. I don't remember. And then she, I think the principal called home. Anyway, the mother came to the door the first thing the next morning and was just really kind of in my face a little, and I was standing at the door greeting the kids as they were coming. And she said, I told my girl that if that boy ever touches her again or does anything to her again, she has my permission to punch him and to do like whatever. And I, as the teacher in charge of all of the kids, immediately just thought, oh my God, if every parent is saying that, we're just going to have assaults all day.
Yeah, so it's going to be a free-for-all. Yeah.
So my response was, no, she'll get suspended if that happens. Please tell her not to do that. Please tell her to talk to an adult. Well, that enraged the mother. And she went and talked to the principal, and the principal came and talked to me later, and he goes, well, do you want to know what she said? And I said, uh-huh. And he said, she was very upset that you are not protecting her daughter. And I said, there's a whole lot of kids in this class. And he said, the parent is not concerned about all of the kids in the class. The parent's primary focus is on their own child.
Mhm.
And he said, I think you need to apologize to her and tell her that you understand her primary devotion to her own child. And it was hard for me to do.
Right.
Because I was like,
right.
she was so openly hostile.
Right.
And we can't have kids punching each other all around.
Right.
But I trusted him. And I really do. And so I told her, I should have led with, I'm really sorry this happened to your child, and I will do my best to protect your child. And,
Right.
And he said, my principal had said, if her child punches another kid, I will deal with that. You don't have to worry about the eventuality of that. I will deal with that. He said, but you need to assure her that you'll look out for her child. And I really think, at the opening of your question, you were talking about how far astray we've gone as a society.
Right.
And I think that a lot of the parental rights, shoving it down people's throats, I think have to do with a lot of people don't seem to really internalize that in public schools, all the kids are there. All of them. The nonverbal kids, the autistic kids, the queer kids, the children of color, the child in a wheelchair, the white child who moved from a rural area and they've hardly ever been around somebody who didn't look like them. They're all in the classroom. And I think part of the parental rights shoving down the throat issue and a lot of these proclamations that people make are about that. Like when they say as a blanket statement, I heard this from a number of teachers who I interviewed, and I've read it constantly in the news and, just all this stuff, that teachers should never be talking about gender or sexuality in the classroom. Students should never know what a teacher's sexual orientation is. And I just feel like, have you ever set foot in a public school classroom? So then, okay, what do you do? If there's two kids out at recess and one of them gets mad at the other one, and like a third grader, this happened in my class plenty of times, and they get mad at the other kid and they go, you're gay, even though they don't, sometimes they wouldn't even really know what it meant, but they knew that it was something to say to hurt somebody when you use it as an insult.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so like, if we're never going to talk about sexuality or gender, how do we deal with that? We just say, fine, you can bully whoever you want.
Right. And not discuss the connotation. Yeah.
And
but the truth is it's there. I mean, it's there.
It's always
all
there.
around them.
It's always there.
I teach after school in the public schools.
Oh, right.
And I teach theater improv, so I have a lot more flexibility. And their topics are about that, but it's all of that is led up to talking about it and acknowledging it. And they actually use the gay word in a good way.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that character should be gay. That would change the story. Great. Versus, let's make him gay.
Right.
Again, it's the undertone. It's and the kids know how to do that, as you know. They know how to do subtext.
I mean, there was one time, I think I put this in the book, where I was on a field trip and with the kids, and we were sitting outside eating lunch, and I was sitting next to one of the moms, and then just kind of out of nowhere, she says, I don't know if you knew that so-and-so is my child's other parent. And it was a woman. And and I said, oh, no, I heard her name a lot, but I didn't know, so thanks for letting me know. And then she said, and then she volunteered this. She said, actually, she's trans. And we've been together for many years, and we were together when she transitioned. And I was just overwhelmed by the trust she placed in me to tell me that. And then I just thought, okay, this is during the time when I was starting to get better about addressing things more directly in the classroom about gender and orientation and other topics like that. And so I read a book that wasn't about being trans. I read the book that you've maybe heard of, the Penguin book.
Yes.
And Tango Makes Three.
Exactly.
Yeah. So sweet and so perfect for third grade.
Yeah.
And when I got to the end of it, and this girl was so shy, and when I got to the end of it, I just said, does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share of something that came into their mind while I was reading? And this shy little girl who usually hid behind her hair just belted out, I have two moms. And I was just there was an urgency to the cry that just pierced me, because it was obvious that it filled her inside, and that she had figured out as an 8-year-old that she's not supposed to talk about that. And somebody was finally giving her permission in a group setting to be proud and vocal about her family.
Right.
And and so I think when people try to say you should never talk about this, you should never allow this, they're not thinking about kids whose lives are in some way in the non-majority.
Right.
And if they want to be in a school where all they hear is, Christian nationalism or whatever,
right,
they can go to a private school. But in a public school, we care about all the kids. We don't care about upholding only the rights of the majority.
Yeah.
The ones with power. That's not
right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not, what I'm coming to realize more is it's actually not about majority anymore. It is about the ones in power and the ones who everything fits into a perfect little box or a vision, that I believe the vast majority of people don't actually fit into or subscribe to, frankly, right? So I think the ones in power are just holding on really tightly to this vision. And I do think, the ones in power happen to have all the money too. So there is that. At this point, it does seem to be they have a lot of money and they are able to still tout this vision as a quote unquote majority. But I do feel like the vast majority of people are not living this vision, or also everyone's a little funky in ways, right? Like everyone, your internal life does not subscribe to that vision, I don't think. There's always something that's a little funky.
Anxiety disorder.
Right, exactly.
There's all of it.
And it may be hidden from the world. It may not be visible, but it's there. And so I have always subscribed to public schooling being education for all. And not only education, but, just growing into the adult and human that you're going to be for all, right?
Yeah.
What I want to ask, though, is what was the class's response to this little girl's exclaiming
it
that
just flew out of her mouth.
Flew out of her mouth, right? Exactly. So that, and then so how did her peers react? Like what kind of discussion happened after that?
We didn't. They all had ideas. They all had, not all. A lot of kids had something they wanted to say, and they just kind of folded it into, this is one of the things that somebody shared.
Right.
And I said something about, oh, that's great. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. It was just something like that. And then the next kid had some kind of insight that they wanted to share.
Right.
Versus someone go, oh, really?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it shifts the whole tone.
Yes.
Because they read the tone, they read everything. As I said, I teach in LA middle school, after school, but I walk in early. The signage in the schools has changed dramatically, that's on the walls, which I love. It's all inclusive. And when the bullying issue came, there was so many about how to treat other people. And that to me is inspirational that that's happening. And then I compare as a teacher, when I went to school, we had all the cliques. The
Yeah.
cliques at LAUSD, they're a mixed bag of everything, which to me is heartwarming. It just
Yeah.
it
You're right.
just
Yeah.
does. And in some ways, it doesn't matter to them. It's mattering to us.
Right. It matters
Yes.
more to the
That's
adults.
part of the problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because unfortunately,
Totally agree.
the district my kids came from was a much more closed district. And it wasn't, it's in this major metropolitan area, but it was shifting very conservative. It's very conservative now. And yeah, it's the opposite of what a public education should be. Like they are basically trying to turn it into a private school, but with public funding, which I think is, frankly, the goal of the conservative movement anyway. So there it is. But I think what I love hearing about, the story that you just told is that for kids, especially in the more primary grades, it isn't a thing because it's brand new information to them all the time. And so they just take it in as new information. It doesn't have a connotation to it yet.
Sometimes it can. Sometimes it does mean something to some kids. And sometimes, there were some kids, high school kids, that one of the teachers I interviewed, told me, who said some horrible things about her. And she was openly lesbian. And so to some kids, it does. It's not like everybody is all accepting, but we're never going to get there if the teachers are afraid to ever say anything that's going to be more inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
So, no, and I agree. I mean, and I think, unfortunately, I do think, especially in the district that my kids came from, there's a lot of money there. And so parents can sue. Like they have the means and, the ability to sue. And I do think it's like not a muzzling effect, but it is, it makes teachers, anyone afraid, and rightfully so. Like I understand it is a matter of self-preservation in that respect. So, and I think that's just it's heartbreaking. I know there were some teachers you spoke about who just were like, no matter what, they stayed the course and they were able to be bold and they were able to keep, saying what they felt was right and true. And in terms of being able to educate and inform students, they just kept going. Did you come into contact with teachers who were doing the kind of self-preservation dance, to use your term from earlier, but still within that needing to inform? Were there any examples of that? I guess trying to be courageous, but in a practical way.
Oh, yeah. Because there's one I'm thinking of now who she almost lost her job. She was really tormented by a pastor who, in his congregation, if this gives you a flavor, they had Marjorie Taylor Greene come as a speaker at their church in Southern California.
Right.
And they also gave a standing ovation to a January 6er after Trump pardoned him and he came back to church.
Right.
The congregation rose up in, adulation. So this pastor has raised money to try to overthrow to tip the scale in school boards from middle of the road to very conservative.
Right.
And then they do all the things that, those districts do. And he went after this teacher who was very open about her support of queer kids. And then she ended up at a different school, and there was still trouble. And so she ended up she went through this big investigation, was ordered to stay home for a big part of a school year. And then she was told the lawyer for the teachers union was able to, worked with her and was able to keep her job. But she was advised by people in the union, don't wear any more rainbows, little hair clips in your
Yeah,
hair.
right.
Don't wear any pins. Don't have any books in your personal classroom library unless you have first cleared them with administration.
Right.
And I mean, that is not how teachers operate.
Right,
Right. We buy hundreds, thousands of books. You don't clear each one. But she is still teaching. And she has had to decide, do I abide by these things? No choosing books on my own, no wearing adornments that remind
that
all kids that they're
exactly.
Yeah. And so it has been really hard for her to tone down that part of herself, but she is still teaching workshops to fellow teachers about how to be supportive to queer kids.
Right.
And so, and the need to be inclusive.
Right.
And so to me, the fact that she is still upright.
Yes.
And that she is still using her voice to talk about the need for inclusivity.
Right.
That's a win.
Right.
She had to change how she goes about it.
Right.
But that's a win. And one teacher who I met with who had a lot of death threats because they were interviewed in the New York Times. The New York Times, it was several years ago, interviewed teachers from around the country asking the question, should teachers be required to out kids to their parents? Right. And this teacher said a lot of things, but the thing that the Times quoted them on was, no, because some kids need to be protected from their parents.
Right.
And you're nodding. Yeah. Teachers nod when they hear that,
right.
But the people parents, of this teacher's town, oh my God, the calls, the death threats, the calls for the district to fire that teacher.
Right.
So I ended up speaking at length with that teacher later. We've actually become friends, and I showed a sample chapter to this teacher, and they cautioned me against glorifying the teachers who stay in the profession and holding them up as they are a success story versus teachers who decide they need to leave and kind of painting them as, well, they couldn't take it or they had to, they failed.
Right.
And so this teacher was saying, if they survive, it's success.
Right.
And for some people, success looks different than it does for other people.
Right.
And some people decide they're going to advocate for kids or for just people in a different way.
Right.
And so, I just wanted to say that too, that,
Yeah. No, it is important because
important.
Yes, that the educators remain educating. And it may not be direct education, to the kids, like your teacher friend is also teaching fellow teachers. That's so huge. Like, what professional development basically is so important to share those concepts and ideas. And I do think, to speak to the parent feeling, I think what was important to me was realizing as a parent, I don't have all the answers. And I don't know that. I think sort of as parents, we're sort of taught to be like, we have to guide and mold these children to get to the whatever. And it's really more like early on, I realized I popped out my children and they were already very much themselves. Like I can tell you within the first 30 seconds of them existing, they were their personalities. Like it is it was a little unnerving. Now, when I think back to it,
so
like
interesting,
they're very, the very essence of themselves, I should say. They weren't talking to me and telling me who they were, but just from their physicality and kind of how they approach those 30 seconds of life, I'm like, oh, I kind of see exactly who you were. You already told me who you were, kind of thing. But there was a moment, especially I think in middle school with my children, there were times when I could feel myself being like, oh, no, that's not my kid. That's not how they respond or what, just a knee-jerk sort of initial reaction to maybe what a teacher had told me. And thank God there was this one teacher, Daniela Camp-Taylor, if you're out there, you are a godsend. She kind of stood strong. She had told me something in the beginning of the year. I immediately kind of wrote it off, and I it wasn't a great interaction between me and her. But throughout the year, she kind of just kept checking in, and would kind of bring something up. And I realized, I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what's best for my child right now. My child is going through something that I don't have the tools to navigate with them. And this teacher happens to have these tools, and this teacher has other resources in their toolkit to help my child. And so I was able to open up to that. But I don't know, as people, as just not even parents, but just as people, I do feel like there's times when we don't recognize our own limitations.
Yeah, we also think we know people, we think we know our children, but they act
Right.
differently.
Exactly. In different situations, they act very differently.
Right. And that's where the teacher comes in and says, oh, and the parent goes, what? And
yes.
if they can look at the gap
Yeah.
and hang out with it, then maybe they can go, huh, I noticed a little of that at home, but I didn't think it was that. Well, when she gets out,
right. And she's interacting with different people.
Right.
Like I've heard from teachers and also just like other parents maybe who are volunteering at the schools where it's like, oh, kids are really smart and they can kind of like pull the wool over people or, their own parents' eyes, especially. I think kids know their parents maybe better than the parents know their kids sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's where parents' rights, but there needs to be sort of a balance because parents have rights, but we don't always know what the right thing to do is because we are working from a more limited toolbox. We aren't trained, right? Like we don't have the training that teachers do, that counselors do, that administrators do, and just your 30 plus years of on the job training, in interacting with kids at this specific age. So I do feel like unless there is some sort of parent training course, which up to now there really hasn't been, and I don't know that parents would subscribe to it. We need to, again, build up that trust.
I mean, if everyone could come into it as it's a collaboration.
Right. Yeah.
That would be the key. But as you know, Sue, and Farah, and I know firsthand, it's not always, it's sort of a us and them. And
it is.
What are you doing? What do you say? You said this in class to my kid. And it's like, but listen, context, listen, let's collaborate and find out where that gap is.
Right.
And see where we can look at something.
Right.
Yeah. I think that Farah, what you said about realizing that you don't have all the answers. And I think that's important for teachers to realize too. And to what you're saying, Thomas, about a true collaboration would require both sides realizing I don't have all the answers. Because if one side thinks they have all, then it's not a collaboration. Then they're trying to convince the other, you have to do it my way.
Right. Right.
But if both sides realize, can accept that they both have the best, can trust that the other side has the best in, hopes and intentions for their child, good things can happen. I'm reminded of, I was sitting at this same table where I am now. My last year of teaching, back to school night was online. And I had happened to read, this was a different year of me reading the Penguin book. And it's not like that's the only book I ever read, but
it's an important book.
I had read that day the book to the kids. Well, kids who weren't wearing headphones, if there was an adult in the room, they could hear what I was teaching the kids. So I had read that book to the kids. And so this really nice parent asked me in the middle of back to school night, she said, I have a question. I heard you read this book to the kids today, and I'm not angry, but I'd like to hear you explain because I don't feel like talking about being gay even though it was about penguins,
Yeah.
is appropriate for third grade. And I was like, oh boy, because all these little faces are looking at me on a computer. And I just launched into this explanation of, it's my job to teach all of the kids about how big the world is. And, there are kids who can't walk, who maybe never see themselves reflected in a book. And for so long, Black kids only read books about little white kids. And so I just said, it's really important for all of the kids to know that there's a lot of other people in the world. Like, it's really important for the kids who, in whatever way, I don't want to use the words, different or majority, minority, whatever.
Right. But it is.
Who
variation.
have somewhat different, variation. There you go. Who have some kind of variation in their life. We all need to see that we are validated. We all need that. And I think especially kids who don't see themselves represented, they need it more. But the kids who do see themselves represented also need to
see it
know
too.
That they need to see it too, because that's us communicating to all of them that everyone is important, everyone is valuable,
that everyone deserves a place at the table. And that's really the big message, is that even though you've been living your world like this, it's much bigger than that. And that's the job of teachers and parents, to let their kids know there's a bigger world. You can choose where you want to hang out, but be respectful along the way.
Yeah. And it was really, I wish I had recorded that conversation for back to school night, because it was really beautiful. As I was talking, all these little squares, I saw a lot of people nodding. They got it. And, there still may have been a few who were uncomfortable, but whatever. I mean, I felt good about what I said, and I felt like it was important to say.
And it was an opportunity to talk to someone who may not have agreed with you wholeheartedly, right?
Yeah.
Which is key. That's a really lovely interaction.
They're not all like that.
Right.
Yeah. No, it was great.
Yeah, it's great to have. And it's also the example of, I know you say this to the kids, there's no wrong question or whatever. Once you bring it up, you've opened it up, and here we are. Now we can discuss it. And this is the goal, right? Is to get it out there. We talked at the beginning about not saying things, but it's about open it up and pick at it. Pick at it as much as you want. I'm happy to pick at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, just with the speed and vastness of information available now, you have to pick at these things, because your kids are going to see them anyway.
Right.
You might as well address them directly and be able to talk about it than, pretend that you're going to hide it from them. They're going to find it anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You are sounding like the voice of experience. Yeah.
Yes. Well, my kids are very much teenagers now. And it's funny, actually, because I always like to call it, like, and I'm sure you're aware of this as a teacher. There's different ages at which they come online at different times. I call it coming online, just different levels of their awareness, right? And so now, as teenagers, they are able to speak to times when they were younger, when they heard things or came upon things and didn't really know what to do about it, but how their younger self processed it. And it's just so fascinating, because they're putting together these building blocks of information as best they can with their limited knowledge as little people. And so you want to make sure that if they get this one building block that's a little funky, or a child wouldn't be able to process, hopefully there's an adult around who can kind of help them process it so that it's not.
So it's not social media.
Right. It's not social media telling them, and that's real dangerous,
Some
right?
weird
Exactly.
whatever.
Like you can have a real world experience.
Person.
Exactly.
Right.
Discussing it
Right.
and discussing how maybe complex it could be, or,
Yeah. Or the ability to trust a teacher to ask them about something versus going on the internet or, I just read this and is this? Yeah, whatever. And what do you think, Miss Granzella?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know we've been talking for a very long time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
This is great. Yeah.
But we like to end on what may be a hope that our guest has for the future. Like what is a hope that you have in your heart right now for, going forward in the world?
I have hope that young people are learning from what they are seeing now. I know that we all say, oh, there's always been trouble. But I just feel like things are moving so fast right now down a scary road. And I have hope in the ability of young people to decide that they want a better world than the one we've set up right now. I mean, I know you said you haven't finished, so you have a very hopeful chapter ahead of you. The last chapter is about high schoolers who changed their world. And I have hope that that young people will decide that they need to be better than what we are handing them right now. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Sue, for being with us.
Thank you.
This was such a great conversation.
Thank you.
I hope, please do keep in touch with the PFLAG LA podcast. We would love to, further the conversation, especially as public school is under fire right now, and to keep tabs on you and also just the teacher friends you made throughout California. We wish the best for all of you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you.
Yeah, well, thank you for being with us today. That's our podcast for this month, the PFLAG LA Podcast. We're monthly, and we are on all the platforms. You can see us on YouTube, and you can see us on Spotify as well. They do video now. But you can always check out our website, pflagla.org, which has all the information. Thanks to all the folks in the background. Anthony, hopefully, will be back next month. And thanks to Jethro and Gabriella for helping us out. As I always say every month, remember, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thank you.